Howdy, Ken Cook here, Prepared Marketing. I'm sitting with Colin Parker. He's a partner at Infusionsoft, and he runs Lone Star Sales Consulting. Is that right?
Sales performance.
Sales performance. I was pretty close. Tell us a little bit about what you do, Colin.
So typically I work with solopreneurs, hence the Lone Star, and we help them improve their sales performance. So how do we get more sales? And typically I work with B2B companies.
Okay. What's your background? What brought you into the this sales coaching realm?
Well, actually my background started as a sales manager, worked in sales, ran sales for big companies, and we always had employees using CRMs. We were one of the first adopters of Salesforce. But one of the things I always saw was the fact that employees were putting stuff in the CRM system, but they weren't getting anything back. Mm-hmm. So really it was a tool for management to be able to track what they're doing. So what you had was salespeople kind of putting some data in, not others, not keeping it updated, and it became an ongoing battle. And so in my own business, when I started my own business, one of the first things I saw with Infusionsoft was the ability to automate sales. And for me, that was really the first time I realized that I could use a CRM, could be updating things, and the system actually be working for me. It could do all those repetitive tasks that I always had good intentions to do, but never would do. So thank you emails after meetings, the ability to take a sales pipeline and automate it so that when I move somebody into a stage, automation automatically kicks off.
Excellent.
And so it was a huge thing. It allowed me to grow my business without adding any extra people. So I could have a small sales force of just me, and I could handle lots of leads because most of the system was automated, and it allowed me to give a consistent experience to every prospect I had.
Beautiful. Let's talk about some of the challenges you see for small businesses. What would you say right now is the number one reason small businesses are having, dragging sales or aren't selling as well as they could?
I think that's two parts. The first part, I think, is visibility. I think that what happens with a lot of salespeople or a lot of companies is that they aren't visible enough to their prospects. And so often we'll find is business owners, if they get in front of a prospect and can have a good conversation with them, they can normally sell. But the fact is they're not getting enough in front of enough of the right people. So they tend to be spending too much of their time behind screens and not enough time in front of clients and prospects. And part of that is really where a tool like Infusionsoft really helps because it adds consistency. And I think consistency is the other problem, is that we're too often doing one and done. So we go to a trade show, but we don't follow up with leads. We go to a networking event, but we don't follow up with people we meet. I give the example once of a lot of times is I'll talk to clients and they've gone to a trade show and I'll say to them, have you followed up with that lead? And they'll say, well, I got back, it was kind of busy. And if you haven't figured out what you're going to do with a lead before the trade show, it isn't going to happen afterwards.
Gotcha.
So I think part of what you want to do is you want to be visible, and then you want to be consistent. You want to have consistent follow-up with people. And if you do those things, you'll get a lot more sales. And then what you can do is you can refine that process. So now I can refine what happens after a trade show. I can refine what happens after a networking event to now with that, I can get a much higher conversion rate as I move along. But you have to start somewhere, and what we typically see is people don't know where to start. They don't really understand in their own business what's next.
So is the starting point prospecting? I mean, is that where you see small businesses really failing? Is they're failing to prospect, or is it somewhere else?
Well, unfortunately, the failure rates throughout their sales process, but prospecting is one area. It's really about building that visibility and having lots of people to talk to. The second part of that, though, is prospecting is qualifying. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get people who you run into and talk to who might not be a good prospect at all, and you should just ignore them. You should just push them off to the side. But when you get to people, you're going to have people who are good prospects, but now's not the right time. So the problem's not bad enough for them to fix right now, or it's they don't have the financial capability right in the moment. Doesn't mean they couldn't be a good customer a year down the road, 6 months down the road. And what we want to do with them is we want to nurture them. So we want to build ourselves up as the expert, have them realize that we can help them in their business. And later on, when they're ready, then you can have that dialogue. And then there's the people who are probably your best prospects who've got a problem they want to solve, and they have the financial capability to do it. And what we want to do is move them into our sales process, or our sales process. The others sort of go into that other bin, which is the nurturing. So we keep them warm so that when they are ready, then we bring them over into our sales process.
Beautiful. How do you see Infusionsoft helping people in their sales process?
One of the things that I think why people struggle with sales is that they haven't figured out what's next. And Infusionsoft requires you to do that. It requires you really to think about what's the client journey? What should happen at different stages? Now, one thing that why people struggle with automating sales, automating marketing is easier because we think is we're going to give them this message, then this message, then this message. Problem with sales is it isn't necessarily linear. So you will find with prospects is they don't go step 1, then step 2, then step 3, then step 4. Typically what happens is that based on where they're coming to you, where they are when they come to you, they might have some knowledge, they might have no knowledge. They might have done some Google searching, have some background, and on the internet we know that it's all good information. Or bad information, or completely erroneous information.
Right.
And so often we have to be able to figure out where they're at to know where to start them. And Infusionsoft allows you to build a nonlinear pipeline. So I can move them into whatever sales stage they're at and sort of what I want them to do moving forward.
Gotcha.
And so you can do that with a system like Infusionsoft by using their opportunity management and move them from stage to stage. But it takes that human intervention. It takes the salesperson or the business owner to say, here's where they are in the process.
Gotcha.
So, when you meet somebody, you might have somebody, first time you talk to them, say, well, can you give me a proposal? That doesn't mean they're necessarily closer to buying than somebody who wants some more information. Sometimes people don't know what the next step is. And so, a good sales technique is to actually show people kind of the process you're going to walk them through. And so in some ways we teach them how to buy, and a tool like Infusionsoft is great for that.
Beautiful. For the small business owners out there watching this, kind of one thing I always want to give is a takeaway. If there's a book, an author, podcast, what's the one thing a small business owner who's struggling with sales should really be paying attention to, reading, listening to, if they could only have one thing in your opinion?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question because there's lots of good people out there.
Absolutely.
One of the things I really like. One of the things I really like is Don Miller's stuff, and Don's more on the marketing side, but I think Don allows you to clear up your message, and his company StoryBrand allows you to think about what you're messaging. But really the one takeaway they should take about is to think about in the sales process what they should be doing next. If you really thought about what should happen after I go to a trade show, what's the next step? Should it be a thank you email message? Should it be a telephone call? Then what comes after that? And if you just keep asking the what's next question, you can start to build out your sequence and your steps. And if you can start to do that, then you can use a tool like Infusionsoft to build it. And I will tell you is even a bad process that's consistent will give you much more sales than no process.
Beautiful. Well, hey, thank you so much, Colin. I really appreciate the time. Thanks for sitting down with us.
Thank you.
And we look forward to learning a lot more from you.
Thanks.